Howdy, and welcome to another episode of Grit in the Wild podcast. I'm your host, Adam Short,
And I'm your co host, Melissa Short.
and together we're here to talk about toxic faith, spiritual abuse, religious trauma, church scandals, trauma. I think I already said trauma, and really everything in between those subjects as we continue to unpack our journey publicly and talk a little bit about our journey and our story and our history in the hypercharismatic church movements primarily, but then also some of the other movements where we've seen abuse. And so we just wanted to come back on and have another episode. I think it's been a few weeks since we last
Yeah.
came on, and we got a few things we want to talk about tonight. Mainly, I think you had a pretty long list of stuff you wanted to hit, and then I've got some stuff too, but I'll kind of defer to you to kick us off.
Yeah. I'm kind of like overwhelmed with like where to start. Yeah. So I guess I should share a little bit of a background for context. So, I've been taking a course on recovering from spiritual abuse, religious trauma, and cult recovery. And I meant to write down the girls' names who teach their, one of them's a psychologist and one of them is a therapist. I'll probably put their link in our comments, but they're one of them did her dissertation and research for her doctoral program on this, and it's been really interesting. So they've given a lot of like their career to studying this and working with people who have religious trauma and spiritual abuse and who are coming out of cults too. And so it's been really eye opening for me. Like I'm already pretty, I've spent a lot of time over the last 4 years, like really studying trauma and like, um, been trained in like what heals trauma and all of that and working with clients. But this has been really interesting in the fact that it's very specific towards this type of trauma. So, um, yeah, one of the themes that's like really stood out to me that I was kind of sharing with you was about this idea all across the board with religious trauma, spiritual abuse, and cults is this like idea of conformity. And
Mm.
that is such um, a huge part of these high control groups that we're coming out of. And even not right, like even not just high control groups, it's kind of made its way into our mainstream Christianity these days, evangelical Christianity, the charismatic movement. I think that's just kind of across the board now,
Yeah,
is like this idea that we need to believe the same, that we need to think the same, that we need to act the same, um, feel the same about everything. And so it's this idea that if you don't, right, you need to get on the same page
hmm,
or you're doing something wrong or right, you're defective or fill in the blank. So
right.
um yeah, that's just kind of been a big theme throughout this training. I mean, there's a
Yeah,
ton of stuff that I would love to unpack, but I'm still processing it myself.
yeah,
But I probably will share little bits and pieces. But
yeah.
yeah, I feel like that's a big theme right
Big
now.
subject. Yeah.
Yeah, we've kind of been talking about that.
Yeah. And it's interesting, as I've worked through my journey of therapy, working with a trauma informed therapist, um, the concept of how your brain is neuroplastic
Yeah.
has become that's been a very key sort of part of my journey. And I think one of the things that happens is when you've been a part of a high control group, or even if it's a group that isn't necessarily high control on its face, maybe it's a group, it could be even a university, right?
Oh
Because
yeah.
you look at it's been a long time since I was in college, but outside looking in, when you look at some of the output of your universities nowadays, at least here in the United States, it seems like there is quite a groove of thinking that is produced by your universities. And so I guess what I'm saying is, like, when you have been in a, whether it's a university, a high control group, a company, whatever the organization is, your brain gets used to operating in a way that's very binary.
Absolutely. Yes.
And
Yeah.
so when it comes to, and I think this is maybe where it might intersect in our experience here, in not claiming to be a expert on advocacy whatsoever, but trying to do our part in advocating for victims and survivors of spiritual and sexual abuse, right,
Yeah.
in the church. um what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say it's easy to do the same thing that you did
Yeah.
when you were in a cult. Like, once you're out of the cult, now you're not in the cult, and there's a certain way you're supposed to believe now that you're not in a cult. But see, I think that one of the most difficult parts of deconstruction and reconstruction is identifying the nuance.
Yeah, it's so hard, and it does take time and healing and stepping back, right, and really being curious about things and being like we've talked about before, like bringing things to the table and really looking at them, really thinking about them. That's one of the things they talked about in the course too, was about deconstruction. And she talked about it's like her definition of that was like invest. I'm looking
I'm
at my
curious, yeah,
notes.
what is her
Okay,
definition?
she called it thoughtful, like a thoughtful analysis, but it was investigating parts of your belief system one at a time instead of all or nothing thinking, right?
Okay,
Because
yeah,
when we come out of a high control group,
right.
just one other side note, what you said was really good. They mentioned that these high control groups and these cult like ideologies and behaviors are not specific to just churches.
Mhm.
It can be an organization, it can be a
Yeah.
business. They
Well, we know
mentioned,
that to be the case.
yeah,
I mean, we went through one.
MLMs.
Yeah.
That's part of like those, a lot of them
Did
are
she talk
now,
about
they
MLMs,
mention them
or loosely,
briefly.
like, not like
Yeah.
too outwardly or
They
too?
didn't go into specifics. They briefly touched on that, but like just making the point that it's not specific to just churches or cults like we
Yeah.
would think of as cults. It can be, like you said, it can be a university. It can
Or
be,
you mentioned this too before we started recording, like political stuff, like political
yes.
groups,
Yeah.
like that, dude, that gets even probably
I want
more
to talk about that.
polarized than even the religious
Yes.
groups. I mean, I don't know which one can which one gets more nasty. I don't know. Are religious groups nastier than political groups? I don't know. I think they're both they I think they both get pretty dang nasty.
Yeah.
And like the moment you defect, and I think that's what you see and sorry, not to take off a tangent here, but I think that's what you see in government and Congress. Like, and I think that's one of the reasons it's so rare for a congressman or senator to break rank from the greater
Hmm.
groupthink. Because, first of all, the moment that you do that, you are setting yourself up as a target
Absolutely. Yeah.
for the machine to literally grind its way over you until you are basically chewed up and spit out.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Yeah, there's not room in our current landscape right now because of all the polarization. And it's everywhere, right? It's politics, it's the church, it's
Yeah.
families, it's, educate, like everywhere I look, it's like everybody's on one side or the other, or at least the media makes us think that way. The perception is that everybody's either over here or over here. Interesting thought. I read an article today that came up on my feed, and he talked about the majority, like the 10% of people on like X or social media platforms are speaking for like the 90% of people. Like it's only the
Okay.
10%.
That's interesting.
And he said, and those 10% tend to be very extreme on either side. So the
Mm.
perception is that, oh my gosh, the
That everybody
majority is extreme.
thinks.
When he said
Mm,
most people are moderate, they're in the middle.
that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was very
I
interesting.
would love to see. Did they cite any statistical research they
Can't
did?
remember. I'll
I
see if I
I
can
would
find
like
it.
to know. I'm automatically very skeptical anytime I hear statistics.
Yeah.
I'm not questioning that statistic, but when they say 90% versus the 10%, I would love to see like how they got those numbers. Like,
Yeah.
did they do, some type of statistical data analysis? Like, that's like where I get nerdy. Like, I want to know, like, what are the underlying numbers or trends that they've mapped out. And I think, though, like, anecdotally, that's probably very accurate.
Yeah.
Even if it's not exactly 90-10, maybe it's 80-20, or I don't know. It probably depends on the day too.
Yeah. I think you and I have had a lot of conversations over the past few weeks about the extremes. And I've just been really, really aware of that and really trying. And I think we can all do it. I think it's human nature to want certainty. Certainty is, I've talked about this before. our brains and bodies are wired for safety, and certainty feels safe to us. When we are in that place of uncertainty, it's very uncomfortable, and we don't like discomfort. We sometimes associate discomfort with danger when we're actually like safe. It's part of like
Mm,
trauma work and healing is learning like, oh my gosh, I can feel discomfort and I can feel uncertainty and I can feel safe at the same time.
mm.
So it's like, yeah, it's
That's
learning to
interesting.
enter into nuance. It's
How
learning.
okay, help me understand. I think that might be the first time I've heard it put that way. What does that mean? How and even for people who are listening or watching, what who, maybe they're in situations where uh they're back in a situation that might remind them of the church they came out of or a group that they were part of that was very harmful,
Yeah.
right? And like what's an example if you can think of one of, okay, I have discomfort. I'm uncomfortable right now. I kind of want to know for myself too, because
Yeah.
like I'm uncomfortable lots of times, and it's hard to know sometimes. Is this a trigger? Is this what is this? Like, am I safe? And you're, like the whole hypervigilance thing. You're trying to
Yeah.
scan the room and or wherever you're at, and like figure out, hey, am I safe right here, or do I need to walk out and get some fresh air? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so I don't know. What are
It's hard to
what
know
would be?
sometimes.
Yeah, it's
I think
probably all dependent upon the person.
you have to know, I think knowing your triggers and knowing your body, like if you understand your nervous system, which I think is like understanding 1 + 1 = 2 now. Like we really should understand our autonomic nervous system because it's part of our biology
And
and
and what for people who haven't heard that or may not be
okay.
familiar, autonomic.
Okay, your autonomic nervous system controls a lot of functions in your body through the vagus nerve. So that runs from the base of your skull all the way down your heart, through your lungs, your heart, down into your digestive tract. It's the mind body connection, and it controls your breathing, your heart rate, and your digestion. And so through your environment, through your eyes and ears, you're taking in cues all the time. So, am I safe or am I in danger every 4 seconds? Unconsciously, that your body is asking that
Mm, every 4
every
seconds.
4 seconds. So, when people say, oh, don't live by your feelings, I'm like, that is literally impossible. You are living by your feelings every 4 seconds. Your body is constantly gauging.
So let me ask you something. So for people, and this might be kind of off topic, but I am interested and kind of feel snarky about this.
Yeah.
For people who do say that, right? Like don't live out of your emotions or don't get so riled up. And I feel like I've heard spiritual leaders say that, religious leaders
Oh, all the time.
say that, like don't you're too emotional or whatever. Anyway, I could go on a whole little thing on that, but what what happens to the autonomic nervous system when you're told don't live out of your emotions and like and then it's like you go into like ignore and override?
Yeah.
What
So,
happens?
what you have to do essentially is you might feel something it's off, but your leader, right? Your spiritual leader is telling you you shouldn't feel this way. You need to trust. You need to, obey or whatever the teaching is. And you feel something not in congruence with what they're saying.
Mhm.
You're going to put, so you'll either emotionally suppress or you'll dissociate from it. Like you kind of check out, like you learn to
Yeah.
start overriding that warning system.
And kind of
And so it's a form of dissociation and like repression, like emotional repression and suppression. So you push it down, and it's that cognitive dissonance. So
yeah.
yeah, you're feeling something, but you're being told something else. So this
So
wins out. Like,
so isn't that the essence of gaslighting? Like
I mean,
if or
I don't
is that a
know.
part of gas? I mean, isn't that what happens when you're gaslit because you're told one thing but you're experiencing something else?
Yeah, I
Like
mean, the gaslighting's a little bit different because that would be more of like someone denying your reality. I mean, I think it's
so look, that's
different.
a little more forceful.
Yeah, I feel
Okay.
like yeah, I don't want to confuse people, but like
Okay. No, I was
we
just
kind of went
that's
on a off
yeah,
trail. But like,
sorry.
yeah, so you were talking about, what were we talking about? You said the how do you know the difference? The
Yeah.
triggers, like
Well,
we
you mentioned you could experience discomfort but still be safe.
yeah, so that's part of
I don't know if I understand that.
so
Like,
part of that's
yeah.
body awareness, like interoception. Like I'm giving you all these like trauma terms. If you want a good book on this, The Body Keeps the Score is a really, really great book. But like basically, like you have to we all have triggers, and triggers are basically an activation of your nervous system that puts you into fight or flight, or you might freeze or shut
Yeah.
down. And a trigger is typically a feeling memory that reminds you of something in the past. So you're in a situation that feels similar to
Right.
something in the past. Your nervous system's like, oh my gosh, this is that thing, just like that thing that happened.
Mm.
It feels just like that thing and triggers that autonomic response. So you're mobilizing to fight or flight. They're doing that thing that high
Yeah.
control leader did, or you know,
Right.
and so, but if you learn to notice your bright, being in tune with your body, like, oh, I'm getting activated. I'm feeling my blood pressure raise. I'm feeling, I'm feeling tension. I'm feeling tight. Like being aware of your body and pausing for a minute. Um, there's this quote about, oh, I can't remember right now, but it's from Viktor Frankl.
Okay.
But it talks about you want to create space between the stimulus and your response.
That makes sense.
So, right, we automatically, when we feel activated, triggered, we automatically go into that. You want to be able to pause in that moment and ask yourself, check in with your body. What am I feeling in my body right now? What am I needing? Yeah, like kind of connecting.
Hmm.
Even if you have to like if you can step away and get grounded for a minute and like recenter and ask yourself those questions. That's building that relationship with your body and your nervous system, and that can help you know, like, oh, is this just a trigger? Am I getting triggered right now? Or am I actually in danger? And this person is really unsafe. I'm feeling unsafe.
But are
Um,
you saying that you can, how do I say this? You can be uncomfortable or you can experience discomfort, but that not necessarily be a trigger.
yes. Yeah, that's
Okay.
different. Yeah.
It's not like just because I want to keep saying discomfortable, but the word is uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable. Yeah.
Just because you're uncomfortable doesn't mean you're necessarily your system isn't triggering back to a past experience or a memory or
Yeah. It
something.
doesn't necessarily mean that. But
You
I
could
think,
be you could be uncomfortable because you're hungry or hangry or
right.
but can all that stuff combine together and turn into like a big old thing? Like
Yeah.
what if you're uncomfortable and triggered at the same time? I mean, that's probably
Yeah.
a situation where you're not safe, right? Where, hey, I actually this situation right here, it's not just reminding me of something that happened in the past, it actually is
Yeah,
dangerous.
absolutely. And that's why, again, getting to know, like, one of the things they talked about in the course, which is so opposite of what we're told in church, is you have to learn to trust your own emotions. I am feeling this. Like,
Yeah.
we're told constantly to distrust ourselves when that is the path to getting out of this stuff
Yeah.
and not going back into it and not
Makes sense.
perpetuating, systems of abuse and not putting ourselves back into abusive situations. If you ignore what you feel, you will probably put yourself back into some of those
And we
situations.
kind of did that.
We did
We
that.
did that because
Yeah.
I mean we had what 3 or 4 rounds, depending on how you
Yeah.
slice and dice it, of high control slash cultish.
Yeah. And it's yeah, and there's so much we could say about that, but that's more like trauma related and like, but yeah, I think it's the idea that they were talking about, like, as you're healing, coming out of these high control groups and religious trauma and spiritual abuse, you have to understand that your emotions do need to be trusted, right? Whether you're triggered or not, you have to pay attention to that enough to at least get curious and explore that a little more.
Yeah.
Pray about it, right? Like, okay, Lord, what's going on here?
Mm.
However you process that, but it is really, really important to build that relationship with your emotions, a healthy relationship, you know, not bypassing, not spiritual bypassing, gaslighting ourselves, you
Right.
know? But yeah, I mean, I could talk about that a lot. That's one thing that like I really, really focus on with my clients. It's a slow work, but rebuilding that connection to yourself, trusting, okay, I'm feeling this in my body, like not getting rid of it. Like we're taught to like
Yeah.
get rid
Push it
of
down or
anxiety, get
yeah.
rid of fear. Yeah, I saw someone this week mention, and I used to be there, so I get it, but it was
Yeah.
like they were going through something hard and they were sharing how they experience fear. And every time they feel fear, they stop and they take it captive and pray, blah, blah, blah. And like, it made me a little bit sad because there's nothing in of itself wrong about praying for your fear. That's not what I'm saying. But it was the idea that we're so afraid to feel fear
Yeah. Yeah,
that
that's
we're like,
almost like a taboo.
yeah, and it's almost like a part of the cult, one of the behaviors is thought stopping techniques where you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm thinking fear. I gotta stop and pray. I gotta get the fear away."
Mm.
Instead of going, "Oh my gosh, I'm feeling fear," like,
Yeah.
wow, I'm really feeling fear. Of course, I would feel afraid. I'm facing this really, really scary, uncertain thing in my life, and inviting God into that and walking that out as a process, knowing that that's a normal human emotion.
Yeah.
And how you move through the fear is by allowing it
Mm.
and acknowledging it, right? Living in reality. Like, I am feeling fear and I am acknowledging I'm feeling fear instead
Right.
of going, I'm feeling fear. I better stop feeling fear. And then do that
And
every
it
five
makes it,
minutes.
it's, yeah, because if you do that, it just makes it grow and
Oh, it
come back
just,
more.
it creates so much actually more emotional dysregulation. You
Yeah.
actually live more out of your feelings when you do that because you're the anxiety and energy, the energy that it takes to fight against what you're actually feeling
Yeah.
creates much more um emotional, what we call dysregulation, much more, difficulty in working through your emotions. So again, it's just this idea of like, oh my gosh, I feel sad. I'm going to allow myself to feel sad. Or I'm actually really angry and I actually do feel bitter.
Hmm.
I'm going to allow myself to feel that. Um, and trust that, right? Anyways, yeah. But that
Hmm.
was a big, big part of it.
Yeah. That's
So
super helpful. I mean, I'm trying to learn that myself.
yeah.
You tell me about this stuff all the time.
Well, and
You
I
know,
was the worst at that. I mean,
yeah.
there was no one who bypassed more than I did with my emotions.
Well, I mean, I think that we become experts in bypassing,
Yeah,
right? In
that's such a
spiritual
good point.
bypassing in these hypercharismatic groups because, well, I don't know why actually. I mean, I know why, but I don't know how to even finish that sentence because it just is. It's just the way the structure is. It's the way things are set up. Um, I don't know. It's all convoluted in my head. I just know that is the case. Like what's crazy to me is if I think about Bethel, and the ironic thing is we had a really good experience at Bethel. It
Yeah,
was what happened after Bethel, like what Bethel set us up for after that, that was pretty close to shipwrecking our faith.
yeah,
But um ironically, Bethel was a place where emotions were large and very present in some ways, right? Like, and what
yeah,
I mean by that is in worship
yeah,
environments,
yeah. That's a good point.
getting full of the Holy Ghost, or going out on treasure hunts or outreach or whatever. Like, there was a lot of emotion around that. Would you agree?
Yeah, but it was positive emotion, right?
But I'm not finishing my
Okay, sorry.
sentence. There was It was allowed to be positive. Yes, you're right. I think you're right. Like joy, positive, like emotions and worship and all that stuff. But when it came to like struggling through real stuff, that was less allowed. I
Yeah,
mean, there were pockets of, groups where that was more accepted, and
yeah,
some leaders were more okay with that than others. But yeah, I think you're right. It's like the positive stuff was okay, but the negative was
yeah,
not. So I just find that ironic because you would think that in a place where the Holy Spirit is supposedly has full reign and free reign, that you also would be free to explore your emotions and allow that stuff to surface.
yeah.
I think they try to do that in the Sozo program, but that has a whole other, list
Oh
of
gosh.
ramifications
Yeah,
where a lot of people were harmed through that as
yeah,
well. So I don't know. Just thinking out loud, like how emotions could have been more encouraged and sort of allowed to happen, I guess, better.
yeah. Yeah, it's like, yeah, there's so much about that it's a big deal. It's very our emotions are tied to our mental and emotional health and our spiritual well-being. I mean, it's part of our well-being. And so and you mentioned like why aren't they? One of the things, again, sorry that I'm talking about this course all the time, but it's fresh on my mind, but it's because we're easier controlled, right? If emotions are what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it right now. My brain just drew a blank. They get in the way.
Obstacles.
Yes, they're obstacles. There's a word for it, and I literally can't think of it, probably because it's like 9 o'clock at night. But um, anyways, in these high control groups, or even just again across our Christian landscape in our country right now, having emotions gets in the way of the big picture, right? If we allow people to feel and voice and think and even just thinking for themselves, that gets in the way of the mission. It gets in the way of the big picture. And they talked about that.
Hmm.
Like, that is part of the high control, emotional suppression, because that gets in the way of the leader's vision, which we are
Yeah.
all there to serve. That is essentially one of the dynamics of these groups. It's part of authority, is anybody and anything that gets in the way of the vision, collateral damage. I think that's probably the word I was
Oh
looking
yeah,
for.
for sure,
Yeah.
dude. Big time.
So it's all part of that, right? Like, you think about, like, when there's money to be gained, you got to like move out the stuff. You got to like teach stuff that's going to help, get to that big picture. And we're seeing that, right? With all the scandals,
Oh
it's
yeah.
like all the gaslighting and all the denial and all the silence and all the different things. Like, why? It's because it's tied to money, and it's tied to control, and it's tied to power. In places where money and greed and all of that isn't the goal, you're actually empowered to think for yourself and say what you feel, because it's not tied to that stuff. It's not about control, you know?
Yeah, and it's also, I think, another big contributing factor is uh, other leaders who have skeletons and they don't
Yeah.
want theirs to come out, so they don't say anything. You know,
On that topic, should we talk about
go right ahead.
we were just talking like before we got on here about, and I don't really want to like go into him too much, but I'm just going to mention the Michael Tate thing for a minute. If for those of you who don't know, Michael Tate was what, Newsboys,
Hmm.
one of the lead singer, big, right, news breaking story
Not
about,
charismatic,
yeah, he's not even
interestingly,
charismatic. The
more
Christian,
mainstream.
what is it? The Christian,
Country, not country music.
what is
I
it?
keep thinking country music. It's Christian contemporary.
Yes, CCM, Christian
Yeah.
contemporary music, like the biggest, right, Christian, music industry. They were huge, I guess, in the 90s, 2000s. Anyways, all of this broke loose about him living a double lifestyle, all of these horrible, horrible stories coming out about him, more and more and more. And he did acknowledge some pieces of it in a public confession, which, whatever. Whether it was PR, whatever, it's more than other people. I mean, like, at
Right.
least he's acknowledging he did something, instead of like other people who just flat out deny that anything happens.
Right.
But the reason I'm bringing this up, it's very sad. The whole thing is just horribly, horribly sad, and I can only imagine the amount of victims that are out there that
Yeah.
haven't come forward yet, and I hope they do. I hope they do for their own
Another one came
healing.
out uh,
Really, yeah,
yesterday. I think it was 2 days ago.
so sad. It's so, so heartbreaking. But here's what's just okay. Very heartbreaking. Obviously, horrific what's happened. Here's what was really upsetting to me even more about that too, is it's coming out from people. Oh yeah, the CCM, we all knew. People were
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, we all knew."
Right.
And I'm like, "Y'all knew? You're bragging about that?" I'm like, "That's not something to brag about. Like, if you knew
Yeah.
about it, why didn't you say something?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, it's common knowledge." Like, I think I heard somebody say, who worked in the that industry, said, "Oh yeah, like 80% of the artists are like living a double life. They're not even
Oh wow.
Christian." Like, a huge percentage, like
Oh my gosh.
parties, like just doing whatever behind the scenes, and then getting on stage and singing hallelujah, thank you Jesus, whatever.
Wow, 80%. I don't think I'd seen that.
That's what this person said. So again, don't
Yeah.
quote me on that. I personally don't know the
Right.
statistics, but they were just making the point that that was very common. And I'm here thinking,
Ugh.
these people that are coming out saying, "Oh yeah, that's common," or "We all knew," and they didn't say anything.
Mm.
I was just had this thought. I'm like, okay, so if we all don't say anything
Yeah.
when we see these things happening in the church, who does say something?
Right. Like who's left? I
Who
mean,
says
it's
something then?
it's little people like us who are saying things, and we're getting reamed over it.
Yeah.
Like we're getting
Oh
totally
yeah, you
reamed.
do you want to share about
Yeah, sure. I mean, maybe.
I mean, you don't have to,
No,
but
I will. But yeah, before I go to that, just it's so. And when I saw that last week from that particular other leader, not leader, but I guess leader, worship leader person who's not worship leader anymore, but it's more of a mainstream musician. It's like the question that I have is, well, what else are y'all covering up?
yeah.
Like what other open secrets are out there that everybody just knows, except us little people don't know.
Yeah.
Like for those of us, and I don't know when the last time was I listened to CCM, quote unquote.
Oh
Like I
no.
don't even when we were in church, like I didn't listen to that. Like and since I was a teenager, probably. But like how how is it that there are this many open secrets floating around in
Yeah.
Nashville or wherever, Nashville, I think is the main hub for the music and stuff. But like that's I mean, that's even worse potentially than what's going on in the church. Like
Oh yeah. Well,
the cover up, I'm saying like, I don't know. I don't even know what to do with that. I'm totally mind blown.
yeah, it's really sad, and I just think about all the parents, right, that are, you know, I remember going to some of those concerts, like, right after I first got saved, like Jeremy Camp, and again, I don't know who whatever, who's legitimate, who's not,
Right.
but it's just again, and that it's not a judgment against people who are saved and unsaved or anything
Yeah.
like that, but it's the idea that if you are claiming to be something, if you are claiming I'm a Christian, I live by these values, right? You're saying that about yourself, and then you're going and doing the
Yeah.
opposite. That's the
And
problem. Like, that's the problem I have is don't lie to people about it and
yeah.
don't live a double life. I just think about all the
Whew.
parents taking their kids to these
Yeah.
concerts, thinking like, meanwhile, all this stuff. Like, if you want to go into, you can read some of the stories. It's really sad. Like these young
It's
kids
really
who
sad.
they looked up to him, and then
They're
they
totally
were,
shattered,
yeah.
like
Anyways,
crushed. Yeah.
I don't want to share their stories because they're theirs, but it's out there. It's out if you want to read about it. But again, I think it goes back to like, I'm going to go back to the course for a minute, but like this idea of like, I think some of it's like fear, right? Tied to money. Like, oh, if we say something, then what might they say about us? And I've heard a
Yeah.
lot of people
Mutual
say that
blackmail.
you shouldn't judge. Take the
Log.
plank out of your own
Yeah.
eye. But here's the thing: if you're taking the log out of your own eye, you actually can go say something. If you're examining yourself and you're like, okay, well, I'm not out there abusing people. I'm actually not doing these things that I'm calling out. Like that gives you confidence to be able to do that. You're not being a hypocrite. Like
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like I'm not perfect. We're not perfect, but I feel confident in talking about these things because
Hmm.
I'm not out there doing the things that
Right.
I'm talking about. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, Lord, like I'm examining me before I get out and talk about these things. If I was doing them, that would be very hypocritical of me. And yes,
Right.
that would be judgmental of me if I was actually doing those things. So I don't know. There's like some weird beliefs around those. It's like, don't judge. But then it's like, well, if we don't say something about this, who will? Nobody,
Yeah.
we're seeing nobody did. And that's a problem. Like, fawn. So this idea of fawning is people pleasing, and people pleasing is a trauma response, and it is what we do when we don't feel safe and when we feel afraid. And so this is like, oh my gosh, we are taught this all the time. And I
Mm.
think it's tied into this not saying anything. Oh, I don't want to say anything. That wouldn't be nice. That would be
Right.
mean. And oh my gosh, somebody might think this, I'm judging.
Yeah.
And it can go really far to that extent where we're so
And you become
afraid.
silent. You don't say
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm going
And
to go on a
you kind
tangent
of
there.
see some of why people might choose not to say anything. And when I'm saying not say anything, I'm talking about little people. I'm talking about survivors and
Yeah.
victims not saying anything, right? Who go years without saying a word about what happened to them and how they were harmed. I get that. I mean, I experienced harm myself. I know. I mean, I'm just now starting to talk about it 18 years later,
No, I
right?
don't blame the victims. No, that makes sense. Victims have every
Yeah,
right
yeah,
not to
yeah.
say anything because they have been harmed. I'm talking
But
about the
no, no.
people around
Yeah, yeah,
them.
yeah. I get. Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, um, even like on when survivors have said something, they finally have gotten the courage
Yeah.
to say something, and now they're kind of stepping in the role of advocating for others. Uh, when people come out of the woodwork and just are nasty.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, just nasty. I mean, I had it today. Like people are just nasty because I was talking, I was trying to do my little part. And dude, I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. other than respond as kindly as possible, but also I'm going to be firm. I'm
Yeah.
going to be firm. I'm going to ask. I like to ask questions of these people. And yeah, sometimes it gets snarky. I get snarky, but like I don't ever want to return nastiness for
Right.
nastiness. I
Yeah.
don't ever want to, even for people um, who show themselves to be extremely unsafe and untrustworthy and just really bullying and nasty. Like I don't ever want to do that back to them.
Right. Yeah.
I don't feel like that's right either. To just because they've been nasty, I should be nasty back to them.
Yeah.
I think that every person deserves to be treated with dignity. And let's have a conversation about this. Why are you so convinced that Dr. Michael Brown has repented? I mean, that's some of what people are saying to me today. And I'm like, well, has he repented? Because if you look at the record, there are plenty of examples of him not telling the truth
Yeah.
and him minimizing it and him changing his story over many years. So that does not sound to me like repentance.
Yeah. Well,
And so and
yeah.
so you're all of a sudden like for speaking out and calling out Dr. Brown or whoever it is, fill in the blank, you're the bad guy. Like I'm the bad guy for warning the general public that this minister has harmed other women.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, no, I don't accept that.
Yeah, and then I'm just, my question to like somebody like him is like, why do you feel like you need to defend him? Like, my first thought is like, what, like, is there something in your own life that this is like triggering for them? Like, what is it bringing up? Like, why would you want to stop somebody protecting somebody? Like, what
Yeah,
is that? And what was ironic about this person is they were like, I don't know, they said you were like doing the devil's work or something.
yeah. No, they actually said I was the devil's disciple. I'm like, oh, we have reached a new low.
The
I'm the
devil's disciple.
I'm the
Okay.
devil's disciple, I guess.
Yeah, well, he was like, why are you getting online and talking about these leaders like this, blah, 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 blah. And then I was
They're
like
doing the
thinking,
devil's work. Yeah.
I was laughing because I was like, wait, aren't you doing the same exact thing? You're getting online and bashing the
Yeah.
people. It's like, okay, it's so ridiculous. But I guess we're all in our own place with that. And I could imagine 5 or 10 years ago being in the same place. I mean, I wouldn't have done that 5 or 10 years ago because I would have been like too afraid to say anything.
Yeah. Me too.
But I could see, I would probably have felt that inside too, like, oh, how dare we talk about leaders? That's
Right.
so
The honor
dishonoring. We need to pray for them. We need to
yeah.
restore them. Like that's what I would have felt upset about that
The
too.
honor culture would have kicked in big time.
It would have kicked in, but then I would have been too afraid to even say anything because we're told not to say anything.
Yeah, it's like a loop. You can't
Oh
get
my
out of
gosh, it's
you can't get out of the
exhausting.
loop, can you? In the honor culture loop because you're right. Like, yeah, I can't say anything because if I do, it's gonna go up the flagpole and get right on up back there to the top where the top dude is. And then I don't even know what the next step in the circle is after that. But
It was
you
like,
you choose not to say something because you're like, it's not worth the trouble of what's going to happen if do speak up. Like I'm gonna literally have people coming out of the woodwork.
no, you can't say something. You can't feel anything about it, and you can't think anything about it. It's erasure. Like that's what like.
Yeah,
It is an erasure of self. Like
erasure.
erasure is a
Uh-huh.
term. You have to
Okay.
get rid of yourself. You are in complete service of like it's robot
Well,
Christianity.
yeah, and
I
that's what I
can't think anything
totally.
negative about my leader. I can't feel anything negative,
Mm.
and I can't talk about this. And like
And then we
I
wonder
just have to
why.
go away.
Yeah, and then we wonder why there's so many characteristics in these organizations that are cultish,
Oh yeah.
like cult
Oh
like,
yes.
or
Yes. Yes. Yes.
uh because if you can't so much as even having a feeling about it or talk about it or like yeah, just pour my head full of what you want me to think
Yeah.
and call it a day.
It has been so refreshing being outside of the church for a while, like the institution of church, and that like being around people who aren't from these it's very
Yeah. Oh,
refreshing.
totally.
They say
Yeah.
what they think and feel, and it's
Hmm.
not this like charged
They're way
thing
more
like
real. Yeah.
people don't say things like you're bitter or you're angry. They're like, "Yeah, I'm angry. I'm bitter. I'm upset, but it's not like this charge. Like it's just normal humans being humans. And that's been so refreshing to me. I'm actually learning from them, like,
Mm,
oh, this is what normal is like. Because I had to go away being in part of these extreme high control or just toxic religion
mm,
communities. And so it's been really helpful to me to see normal. Like this is healthy, normal human interaction, emotional intelligence, you
mm.
know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I wanted to talk about a couple things getting back onto that. I'm looking at my notes, but I wanted to talk about what they said about deconstruction for a minute.
Yeah.
So they were talking about, and I kind of mentioned this in the beginning, um, their kind of definition of deconstruction was investigating, parts of your belief system one at a time instead of like throwing them all out, right? All or nothing. Like going, okay, instead of just throwing it all out,
Yeah.
I'm going to take one thing at a time and really think about like what is it that I believe about this? What do I think? What do I feel? Yeah, what are my thoughts on this? And they talked about like allowing yourself to be with your gut reaction. So like, right, you may
Yeah.
have been taught something, but you might feel disgust, shame, or like judgment about those, like noticing what happens in your body when you think about certain beliefs. Again, that's that body connection. Your body keeps the score and is telling you something's off. It's like, oh, this I actually
Yeah.
feel disgust when I think about this thing that I was taught. So again, it's like allowing that honesty. They said normalizing not knowing, what did it say? Oh, normalize not knowing the right
That's
answers.
good. Oh, I love that one.
Yeah.
I love
So
that.
that is black
The
and white thinking.
uncertainty.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And this is what they said. They said deconstruct certainty. They said we have to
Yeah, for sure.
deconstruct certainty,
Yeah.
meaning I'm on the right side of this. I have the right answers. There's one way to advocate. There's one way to deconstruct.
Yes.
There's one way to do biblical Christianity. There's
Right.
one way to be a Christian. There's, one way to vote, like
Yeah.
we have to see how those dynamics that we were taught in these groups, how they're playing into our day to day and really be aware of that. Like, okay, so like noticing it's this way, and I do this all the time. I think it's human nature, I think, but I think I'm being more aware of this in my own life, even with things like the abuse stuff. Like, I've been upset with people like, "Don't you see?" And then I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
Right.
Like,
No, they
that's
don't.
like
They don't or
they're like,
don't
"You're
want to.
deceived because you didn't see it this way."
Yeah.
I kind of saw some of that come out lately, and I'm like, like
Yeah.
that doesn't feel like that actually, it actually triggered me. I didn't feel safe with some of the posts that were coming out because it felt similar to the high control we were in,
Yeah.
where it's actually not safe to disagree.
Mm.
It's not safe to have a different belief. It's not safe to have different values. And we really need to recognize when that's happening. Like, we don't have to agree. We don't have to vote the same. We don't have to deconstruct the same. We don't have to land in the same
Yeah.
place. Can we learn to sit with the discomfort of like that person votes differently than me, or that person has a different value than me, or that person, is doing this thing differently than me, and
Right.
noticing when we think that we're in the right about something. Like, and then again, I don't think that means abuse. I think there are some things that are black and white, right? Like abuse and harm is wrong. Like there,
Right.
but anyways, I thought that was really
Yeah. Can
good.
I respond to that?
Yeah,
I
please.
I love that subject personally because it is so personal to me in my journey
Yeah.
of deconstruction. I mean, yeah, we've talked for hours about
Mhm.
this. Like I have been in a place where I've the best I know, I've put everything on the
Yeah.
chopping block. And the chopping block is, hey, come scrutinize it, poke holes in it. You tell me what is or isn't right. And it's not even for me, it's not even about what's right. It's about really like what's true.
What's true? Yeah. That's yeah.
I am so after truth. Like I am skeptical of almost everything I hear,
Yeah.
even stuff from sources that I'm familiar with. I'm skeptical. I'm naturally skeptical now. And I don't know, there's this voice in my head that constantly is asking, "How do you know that? You stated this. How do you know that?" And when people ask me that, I appreciate it because it shows me that they also are looking for the truth.
Yeah.
And when I see people repeating something because just because somebody else has said it, I have warning bells that
Yeah.
go off in my head. So when it comes to deconstruction, I mean, the one thing that I probably couldn't deconstruct is my own experience of how God encountered
Yeah.
me and like my own, because I can't be talked out of that. That was very sovereign, and it
Yeah.
wasn't something that somebody prayed for. It was literally God doing it. And so, but everything else, like I'm like, put it on the chopping block. It doesn't make it easy because there are things that you hold dearly
Yeah.
to for many years. And to think that you believe something that was not above board or true, that is a real loss.
Yeah.
That's a real
Yeah.
loss. And I think that when it comes to leaving groups like Bethel, IHOP, Morningstar, and fill in the blank, whatever other organization, when you've invested so much, it is a huge thing to be able to say, okay, I am willing to face the reality of what this might mean if X, Y, and Z are not actually true.
Yeah. So hard.
And that right there, that's scary.
Mhm.
For some people, it's too scary to even, you know, entertain. For me, it hasn't been scary. It's actually been very comforting. However, that being said, when it comes, you mentioned uncertainty. Like we want certainty
Yeah. We
as
all do.
humans. We
Yeah.
all want certainty. We all want to have the answers and
Yeah.
have things all tight, tightly categorized and put into a nice little box. And I'm no exception. I want that too. Part of the hardest thing for me in this whole, deconstructing one little thing after another is when you look at a leader's life and you're like, I don't know what to believe about you. Are you, do you really believe that what you're teaching is true? Or are you aware that you're
Mm.
deceiving people in real time?
Yeah. So hard.
And so for me, like, I've just found I've had to like turn off all those people. I can't listen to them. Now, does it mean that you have to do that if you're deconstructing? No, not necessarily. I think every person's in their own journey and they get to decide what their deconstruction looks like. I just think for me, like I had to decide I'm turning off all these voices that I used to have in my life because I don't actually know where they're coming from. I don't know what they're teaching, whether what part of what they're teaching is true, whether all of it is true, or whether none of it is true.
Yeah.
And so that part right there is extremely nuanced. It takes a long time. And frankly, I think that it's very likely to change your beliefs on specific issues multiple times as you're going through that process.
Yeah, and I think that's so I love that you said that. It's so healthy too. I think what you're describing is actually really healthy because if you think about we weren't allowed to form a lot of our own opinions. And that's the
Yeah.
thing in these groups and just in Christianity in general and the church right now and with media, right? We are like exposed to 24/7 information coming at our brains all the time.
Yeah.
And there's positives to that, but the downside to that is the more information we have, the more we're staying in our heads and we are disconnected from
Mm.
that intuition that God gave us. There is wisdom in our bodies and in our intuition. And prior to all of the information coming at us, we had to rely on that more. When I couldn't go look up,
True. That's true.
Grok or
Yeah.
Google, to get all my
Yeah.
answers and do all my research, like you had to kind of trust your gut and make a, or you asked your whoever, like for wisdom, and you made a decision. You didn't have it can flood us, and it's the same with high control. Like there's so much information coming at you, there's so much of what you're told to think and do that you don't know what you think and believe. So I think I'm just going back to what you're saying, like
Yeah.
I love that because I think that's exactly, again, not trying to make this like right or wrong, but like a beautiful process to really, what do you think, what are your values, what does God speak to you when you open up your Bible and you look at the verse? What are your reflections? What are your thoughts? You know, I
Hmm.
think normalizing that, like that's really, I think, a path out from this stuff is that, like what you're talking about. And just, yeah, like that really thinking, really processing for yourself, coming to your own conclusions. And that doesn't mean that we don't, right, invite other people in or don't listen. I think
Yeah.
that's helpful. But still, even with that, like, and I've said this too, like, please don't take everything we're saying. Like, stop and like, yeah, I disagree with Adam and Melissa on that. Like, I don't know, like we're just people, like we're just messy people, I don't know. I think I've noticed like when we were at Bethel, I never disagreed with anything they said. I was like,
Yeah.
that's so good, that's so good, so good,
Yeah.
Bill, so good, Chris. I just 100%. And it's been really cool because over the years, like as I take trainings for like trauma and stuff, I'm like, yeah, I don't really agree with that. Or
Yeah.
nah, that doesn't really apply. I don't think that really works. Like I'm like,
Right.
oh, like I actually don't like hook, line, and sinker everything anymore. Um, and I'm glad. It feels good to know that I don't have to like box myself in. But anyways,
Yeah.
um, do you have any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I did, but it left me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, no, I just it was about oh yeah, yeah, I remember. One of the things, and you know this, but just for y'all's benefit, listening and watching, I have this ever ever enlarging mystery box that I'm pretty sure is about crammed full, and of and like the past couple years, I feel like I've crammed so much in that mystery box of stuff, and it could be anything. It could be stuff along the lines of deconstruction, you know, spiritual beliefs, uh, teachings in the Bible. It could be anything. It could be like, are there aliens? I mean, I don't know. I you know, I mean that sounds kind of weird, but I mean
Uh,
I'm just being honest. Like I put stuff in that mystery box because I want to know. I mean, I'm naturally a curious person naturally.
yeah.
Like I want to know stuff and I want to have the answer and I want to find out. And I will try to do all in my power to find it. But the fact is you can't always know the answer. You
No,
can't always have the certainty that you want.
no.
And that is part of what is so hard about deconstruction. And it's also part of what is so hard about when you watch people that you felt like were your heroes were not who you thought they were,
Yeah.
i.e., church leaders. And then now all of a sudden, like all these people are like laying on the ground, and you're like, oh my gosh, I trusted these people, and you're like, how did I get so duped?
Hmm.
And uh and I do know the answer to some of that, but I don't know the answer to a lot of it.
Yeah.
And that just kind of goes in my mystery box. And so the older I get, I feel like the less I know.
Yeah. No, I hear you on that.
And the less dogmatic I feel. I mean, yeah. And you see why as people get older, like especially those that are really advanced in their age, like they've got a lot of wisdom because they've experienced being wrong about some stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they maybe they had, you know, relationships went south or whatever. I don't know. Anything is possible in a human's life as far as circumstances, but like once you get to that age, it's like, okay, maybe hold things. It's ironic. On the one hand, it's like older people seem to hold on to their ways more tightly. But on the other hand, I would like to think that as you get older, you're able to hold things more
Hmm.
loosely because you realize, hey, when I was in my 20s or my 30s, I thought I knew more than I actually did.
Yeah.
And it turns out I actually didn't know much of
Yeah.
anything.
No, yeah,
Which
it's,
and maybe that's one of the reasons that these cults have so successfully captured the minds of young people
yeah.
is because, as you've said 100 times, when you're at that age prior to age 25, your brain is not even formed yet,
Nope.
and you
Yeah.
are you are like literally soaking in everything you hear.
Yeah.
So and then you multiply that by 1,000 people in a room, and everybody's doing that. You're absolutely going to follow suit.
Right. And we're all looking right for belonging, acceptance, purpose, things like that, especially around that age.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of them really high up, not all Christian leaders, but I think some of these leaders that narcissistic behaviors and
Yeah.
that they capitalize on people's vulnerabilities
Yep.
and it is supply for their insecurities and their grandiose vision. And unfortunately, right, as a lot of you and us, like you get discarded, you get used up, and you get discarded, and it's on to the next batch of people for them.
Right.
And we're just left as collateral. And so
Yeah.
I think my hope for people too is like, we got to learn from, we got to learn from it. I really think that's important to learn, what abuse is and what the behaviors are, and self-reflection, like, you know, so that we don't
Yeah.
repeat it. We don't want to keep repeating this pattern we have, and it's very painful to
Yes.
do have this happen
It's
multiple
so
times. And
hard.
some of you, we've
So
talked to some of you that have had this happen multiple times, and it's like,
right.
I know I remember the point where I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I can't keep saying it's them, it's them, it's them." I mean, it is. I'm not saying like it's not our fault, but at some point I had to recognize some of my patterns, right? And unhealed places that kept being drawn into these like almost like trauma bonds, right? Where you
Yeah.
you continue to bond with these like unhealthy people, because of our own wounds too. And again, that's not to blame anyone, but
Right.
it's two-sided. It's they are deceiving and abusive and harmful and manipulative. And the other side of that is, for me at least, I felt like I needed to heal enough where I was, I'm able to recognize
Yeah.
some of that
Oh
now
yeah.
too, so that I don't keep repeating the pattern. Like I'm
Right.
breaking the cycle of abuse in my life. And
Yep.
that's hard. It's hard to face, like, oh my gosh, I have been duped multiple times
Yeah.
and I
That's really
can't
hard.
continue to, yeah, again, I'm trying to be careful with what I say. I don't like blaming people. I think that we're deceived, but I also think learn from it, you know,
Yeah.
learn
Yeah.
from it.
Yeah. There is a two-way street.
Yeah.
I think the way coming from the leaders is the larger part of the street.
Right. Exactly.
Like there's probably
Yeah.
5 lanes on that part of the
Yeah.
freeway, but on
Yes.
the part of the freeway that goes back from us to the leader, if you will, like if we were to put this on, if I were to draw a road
Yeah.
on some paper right here, right?
Yeah.
You got 6 lanes on one side going to the leader.
Yeah. Absolutely. I
Or
love
wait,
that.
it's the other
Like,
way
yeah,
around. Is it coming from the leader? You got 6 lanes because it's like all that
all that's,
messaging, propaganda,
mm-hmm.
control,
Yep.
everything, you coming down the freeway and then going up the freeway is maybe half a lane from you,
Yeah.
but it still takes that hook, like
Yeah.
because as people, we are created with agency. God made us with
Yes. Yeah.
agency, and so spiritual abuse intersects with agency of a human
Absolutely.
being's life.
Yes.
And when that agency is compromised and exploited,
Mm-hmm.
usually I think it is after the one or one half of a lane has already been connected by that hook.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's almost like it's too late to pull away until you have some type of cataclysmic event and you wake up, you realize, oh my gosh, this is what I'm in.
Yeah. I've been abused or I've
And
been hurt.
and
Yeah.
you're like, and of course every person's experience is different. Mine was very well, round one was very in Africa, it was very abrupt. Like I knew immediately something was wrong, but it
Yeah.
took me months before I could physically leave.
Yeah.
And even after leaving, that doesn't solve all your problems. I mean, it solves some problems, but it doesn't solve all of your problems,
No,
does
you
it?
still have
Because
to heal.
you're the person that's left with yourself
Yes.
with your internal spiritual structure that's completely destroyed.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm kind of getting off topic at this
No,
point, but it
it's,
related back to what you said about like the whole like how did we keep ending up getting back into a cult?
yeah.
And so that's a huge thing for us all to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah. And I hope to like organize this stuff that I'm learning in here into a more like, concrete thing to give to you guys or share with you guys. But there was one more thing I wanted to say about, I gotta find it.
okay,
I got my notes here, but because I thought it was important and I had never heard anybody talk about this before. And it's about spirituality and religion.
oh yeah,
So one of the things they mentioned was, right, we have religion and we have harm. And a lot of the times those two things can get conflated, meaning we look at them together, like
right,
religion
okay,
and harm
yeah,
are one, instead of saying, okay, here's my religion and then here's the harm, right? They're two separate things. But because the harm happened within the context of religion or with the spiritual leader, we're like, oh my gosh, religion's bad, right? Or
Kind of like
spirituality is
throw
bad.
the whole thing out,
Yeah.
throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yes, which I want to acknowledge that makes sense. It makes so much sense when people, if that's your experience, that you're like, I don't want anything to do, right? A lot of people are like, I want nothing to do with religion
Hmm.
after what I experienced. I do not blame them at all. But they talked about the difference between spirituality and religion. And they said spirituality is a subjective search for the sacred or an individual experience of the sacred. And religion is a community or institution with established ways of engaging the divine or a system of beliefs, practices, rituals directed towards divine power. Um, and so they're talking about those things being separate and overlapping, which I thought was really good,
Yeah.
right? So we're talking about these high control groups. So, right, there's like religious structures and all the ways of thinking and the beliefs and the rituals and the institution, right, like
Hmm.
programs that are all set up within
But
this.
that'd be more like sounds like a description of a
Yeah,
denomination, maybe of a
right,
church.
or yeah, whatever group or institution. And then you have, right, the spirituality, which is maybe like, right, what we would call like our personal connection with God, right, that personal journey of spirituality with the Lord or connection with God. And again, like these things can overlap, but looking at them separately. And I just really, really like that. And I don't know if that's helpful for any of you. I know, right, we've got people in all different places, right? Like some of you are deconstructing out of faith. Some of you are like, I don't know. Some of you are like, want nothing to do with that. And all of it's valid and makes sense.
Yeah.
But I think just the idea again of like, they were talking about binary thinking, like, um, just um, being able to maybe consider that those two things could be separate might be helpful in untangling some of this. Like maybe there's parts of the spirituality, right? That connection with with the sacred, right? For us as Christians, right? That would be Jesus, our connection with the Lord, being a good thing, but maybe like the constructs, right, and some of the things around that were
Yeah.
toxic, and instead of seeing them as one, like, okay, like maybe this piece can be, there's some good in this maybe, or there's some like truth or realness about this, or something I want to explore or consider, but maybe it's, right, the structure or the religion that was, or the heart, right, that was, does that make sense, like?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Like it's to me it's similar to what you were talking about before with deconstruction where you go line by line, like on each little bitty
Yeah,
belief, like, hey, thing number one, thing number two. And it's like, well, just because I have to throw out number one doesn't mean number two isn't valid.
yeah,
So
yeah, I
that's
think.
kind of what I thought of when you said that.
Yeah, and I know we talked about this, like, with Bethel, because 'cause we're actually a little bit different this. You're like, everything's on the chopping block, and for you, that's, like, how you're processing, and for me, I'm like, "Well, no." I was like, "I don't wanna do that. I don't need to." Like,
Hmm.
there are actually things, like, for example, at Bethel, we've talked about this. I have, like, specific things that happen there that I felt like were very monumental moments with the Lord where he did really profound things in my heart, just personally between me and him,
Yeah,
that I hold sacred. Like those were sacred
I love that.
moments that I had that I don't need to deconstruct because it
Yeah,
was like a knowing. Like I know that I know
yeah,
that I know.
that makes
But
sense.
like for me, so that's what's hard, right? That's kind of this idea of what they're talking about. Like there was a lot of crap at Bethel that I was
Right.
taught that was really damaging and harmful. But then I had these sweet, like, moments in there.
Yeah.
And so, like, for me,
It's,
I could like throw all of Bethel out, right? Like it's all bad. I want
yeah.
nothing to do with it. But then I'm like,
It's so hard.
I would have to throw away my whole history with God. And then
Right.
that's like, okay, I'll erase God out of the picture, right? Like, again, I'm not, this is my own process. Like, this was for me. I'm not saying if
Yeah.
you're fine wherever you're at. This is just my own thing.
Yeah.
But
And
like
I
for
have stuff
me,
like that too
yeah,
from Bethel, that very bright spots,
yeah,
um, which that's one of the things that makes this so difficult
yeah,
to figure out what do you do with all this? I don't know. I, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it out too.
yeah.
So I love that you have anchor points
Well,
that
you
you're
do
like,
too, I think. Yeah.
I
I
do
think like,
for sure.
yeah. So I would encourage, I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe like for those of you watching, like like again, I don't want to put this on you, but like a consideration is like what are those anchoring points for you, regardless of where they came from or who they came from? Like, do
Mm.
you know, can you recall throughout your history with just the Lord? Like, okay, there was a significant
Yeah.
moment, or maybe it was like a song, right? Like, there's still songs that I like
Yeah.
from these movements that were very meaningful to me. And like, and so it's like kind of parceling that out, like, okay, like I don't have to erase my history with God in these certain things just
Mhm.
because the harm happened within that
Yeah.
context. So I'm kind of,
Okay.
yeah,
Let me say it this way. I actually remember I had a conversation with John Collins last week, I think, on one of his episodes. And I was talking about my story, and one of the groups I was a part of in Kansas City, uh the I told John, like, I would not call that this specific group, and I'm not going to name it right now, but you can go listen to his podcast and listen to it, figure it out. Um, I told him I would not call that a cult. That
yeah,
specific organization that I'm not naming right now, uh, just because there was one bad apple.
right.
Well, there's one bad apple who was the pastor who harmed me. Uh, I knew coming away from that didn't necessarily jeopardize or compromise the entire. It did create a lot of problems and
Yeah.
harm organizationally across the organization or throughout the organization. But I think that the example is it was not. I would not call it a cult. Now
Yeah.
somebody else might call it that. But I'm just saying for me.
Your experience of that was not that it was a cult. That's one thing they talked about in the course is, I mean, yes, there's definition for a cult, which I might share another time, but um, like someone's experience of Bethel, I know somebody that's very vocal, and her experience is that Bethel was a cult. Other people are like Bethel's not a cult, but I'm like, no, actually, like they have some characteristics of a cult.
Yeah.
So for one person, that might be their experience.
Yeah.
It might not be yours, but they actually said that like it's
It's possible
subjective.
to have different
Yeah.
variations. Yeah, because person number one could have been far more susceptible to you know, thought stopping, mind control,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and sexual
exactly.
predation and whatever else you
Emotional
want to fill in,
suppression. Yeah.
all that stuff.
Spiritual
Whereas
bypassing.
another person might not have been
Yeah.
as susceptible to
Mm-hmm.
that. And then therefore they didn't have like they didn't have a cult experience, even
Yeah.
though they arguably were in a cult too. But for
Yeah.
them, it wasn't necessarily a cult
Yeah. It's
like it was for the first person.
It's kinda
Yeah.
like our high control group, like, I
Yeah.
remember telling
Yeah.
somebody from there reached out to me, and I just briefly mentioned, they were like, "Oh," like, they were very happy in the organization, and
Oh,
I think it was very helpful for them
to know that.
because of the good that happened, like, the good parts that happen in a cult, and so they were like, "Oh," like, when I mentioned, like, "Hey, like, our experience was this in this group, so
Yeah.
just want you to know," and she was like, "Oh." So again, it's just like, for us, it was total trauma. For somebody else,
Yeah.
they were like, it changed my life. What do you do? That's
It changed my
really,
life too, just for the bad.
yeah, but that is really like, that can be confusing. That can cause you to doubt yourself. Like, if I wasn't where
True.
I'm at
That's
now,
true.
I would
Yeah.
have thought, well, must be me. I'm,
I'm the problem. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Anyways, that's for another day. But
Exactly. Well, thanks for educating us.
well, I hope it wasn't too much. I kind of just spat out everything I'm learning, but I'm going to put the girls because I want to give them credit. This came from
Yeah,
their
the
course. I
course.
will
Yeah.
put it in the I feel like one of them is Catherine Scott. That's like coming to mind, but the other
Okay.
one I need to put their stuff in the
Yeah. Well,
comments.
yeah, we'll add that to the description or whatever. But hopefully y'all found this helpful. And as always, we'd love to hear from you if you want to comment in our YouTube channel, or you can email us at gritinthewild@gmail.com. So it's grit in the wild, one grit in the wild at gmail.com. And so we appreciate y'all being here. And yeah, definitely let us know what your thoughts are and comments. And we look forward to hearing from you and see you next time.
Talk to you soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.